We appreciate your time here.
Yeah.
What's next book? I know what it is, but because I follow you on
and you've
the
kind of alluded to it a couple times.
Yeah. So it's going to be called.
I follow you on the McGroupies, and when you said there's another book, and as I was ordering this one, I'm like, I need to pick up that one too, because I really enjoyed the writing. And
it's going to be a while because we have to get it proofread. I've just finished drafting it. It's called The Eye of the Beholder. I don't even know if it's going to have a subtitle. I don't know. Maybe The Gospel of John is reported.
You have to have a subtitle these days, right?
You always got to have a subtitle. But I know the main title is The Eye of the Beholder. And I've commissioned a great painting that we're going to use for the cover art. You can wait for that. It's by a Catholic artist named Timothy Jones. A beautiful painting. And so it's just about the Gospel of John. Because as we've discussed, the Gospel of John does come in for a lot of extra questioning of its historicity. It's always treated as different. And it'll be interesting. You'll even see scholars talk about the Gospels, and they'll say seemingly positive things. And then they'll say, and then there's John. And it's like, well, last I checked, John was one of the Gospels. Oh, you didn't mean those generalizations, those positive sounding generalizations to apply to John. Gotcha. So I realized when I wrote The Mirror of the Mask, there was so much more that I would need to do to give a robust defense. There is some overlap between them. Also, there's a huge literature on the authorship of John. Now, obviously, authorship doesn't automatically mean reportage. You'd be surprised. You can have scholars who will say, yes, it was written by John, the son of Zebedee, who was Jesus' disciple, and he made this stuff up. You know what I mean? So it doesn't automatically follow that it's reportage, but it helps. Because at least he was in a position to know. He was in a position to tell you what really happened. So lot of material on authorship, and I've had to address that. I have an appendix on the theory by Richard Balcom that the gospel was written by a different guy named John. That you may be familiar with that,
right,
who was also a disciple, but he was not somebody who's ever mentioned by name in the Gospels. That's his theory. And I disagree with that. But I rebut, various criticisms of John, but then I also bring forward a bunch of positive evidence for the veracity and historicity of John. So it's fun, and for the reportage model of John, and it's going to be very controversial. Again, it's going to be very rousing, and I think people will enjoy it. So please follow me on Facebook. I just want to tell people you don't have to be my Facebook friend to follow me on Facebook. You can just click follow, and then you'll get my public content, but you won't have to hear what I had for supper. So, that's not necessary. So, anyway,
I do appreciate the dress up photos that you've been doing through the decades with your daughter.
Yes,
a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely.
I will say the controversy to me is whether or not the footnotes belong at the bottom of the page, because hidden in plain view, I love the subscripts at the bottom, because I'm the one that goes, oh, that's really interesting. I want to read that book. And then I have to flip to the back and I lose my spot. But you did it in Mirror in the Mask, so I appreciated that.
Took a reader poll, a survey, footnotes versus endnotes, and they all said footnotes. And, my feeling is I have a lot of URLs in my footnotes, because I footnote to YouTube, interviews that people have done online, because we are living in the information age, and these are living scholars. So if they've done an interview, I want to be able to expound further on their views. I want to be able to footnote that. But URLs are ugly. They're shitty, down in the footnote there, but I figure if my readers are willing to put up with the ugly footnotes in order to have, the interesting footnotes, then that's up to them, and I will do it that way. And it is footnotes in The Eye of the Beholder. You will be glad to know. So yeah,
that's all I want. You could have the most heretical views, and if you have notes at the bottom of your page, you're not an F book.
Okay, cool.
But,
fun.
So I was trying to think of other books similar to yours that I would put on the shelf if I was one of those crazy people that organized my bookshelf by genre. Ooh, crazy. But I viewed it in line of Michael J. Kruger's Canon Revisited and The Question of the Canon, kind of establishing kind of this historicity and accuracy of establishing the New Testament as intended by the authors and understood by the audience who received them. And I think Mirror the Mask does that just splendidly. I really appreciated the work that you put into it. And it might be if you're just a general reader of theology and the show is to help people pick up those books that they might be nervous about. This is one that you'll probably spend a while getting the arguments and reading through it and maybe pausing at each chapter and coming through. But I really thought that belonged on the shelf with Kruger's books of just bolstering up my confidence in the historicity of the New Testament.
Absolutely. And I would say I have chapter summaries. So to help people not to be
I've notated all of them.
not to be intimidated, you can always feel free to go to the chapter summary first, even. And then read the chapter or skip the chapter. If you're like, I am so not interested in Plutarch, okay, skip the chapter on Plutarch if you want to, that would be fine, but read the chapter summaries. I also want to recommend a couple of other really accessible books for your viewers. There's a book called Can We Trust the Gospels by Peter J. Williams. And he is the principal of Tyndale House in England. He's a very learned British New Testament scholar. He did endorse the Mirror of the Mask, I am pleased to say. And but this book, Can We Trust the Gospels, is a slim volume. And I think that's cool that this great British scholar can wear his learning so lightly and can pick out his facts and present them so engagingly and so accessibly. So I strongly advocate that one. And then a little book called Easter Enigma by John Wenham, the late John Wenham, New Testament scholar. He is harmonizing the Easter accounts. Easter Enigma. Now, I am not saying I endorse every harmonization he gives. When people go to harmonize, they don't always agree with one another. And I'm not going to go into details about that, but I like a lot of them. I agree with most of them. And it's what we call in philosophy or also in science or in engineering, a proof of concept. So a proof of concept is where you show that something can be done. Right? That it's not just impossible. And that's what Wenham is doing. It's a proof of concept that the Easter narratives can be harmonized, and they can be harmonized by using legitimate historical imagination. And that gets such a bad rap nowadays, like you're just some kind of crazy fundamentalist, but it's actually a really good historical practice to engage in, to harmonize. I harmonize Plutarch. Okay, so it's not just something I'm doing because I'm desperate to, salvage the Gospels or something. It's a very, very legitimate enterprise. So I think that those two I would just throw onto people's radar because they're short and they're accessible, but they're really good.
Great, thank you. And links to those books will be included in the show notes and on the website for this episode number. And the two books are Hidden in Plain View, Undesigned Coincidences in the Gospels and Acts, and The Mirror or the Mask, Liberating the Gospels from the Literary Devices. We've had the pleasure of talking to Dr. Lydia McGrew.